Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Marion County Children's Services Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Moore. I'm the Foster Care and Community Engagement Coordinator. And here with me today, I have Dr. Coleen Denton Prater. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more, maybe talk about where you're from, what you do, and that great stuff.
Okay. Hi, I grew up here in Marion as well, and I went to Pleasant. After Pleasant, I went to Miami University in Oxford for undergrad, and then I went to National University of Health Sciences in Lombard, Illinois for chiropractic school. While I was there, I ended up starting some postdoctoral studying in acupuncture and natural internal medicine. So I try to combine the whole person wellness with my practice, and I also went on and studied traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture.
Awesome. So one of the reasons I wanted to have her on, especially with the timing and everything, is because obviously we're getting ready to go into a new year. Well, at the time this posts, it will be a new year. So hallelujah, we're all excited about that. And we wanted to talk about just looking forward and things that we can do to just kind of help everything, I guess, the whole body, like you said. So do you want to tell everybody maybe like where you practice and who you're representing today?
Yeah. So I practice with my husband and my father at Denton Prater Chiropractic and Natural Health on Center Street. And I also coach CrossFit at Pure Function CrossFit on South Main Street. So with Elizabeth and my husband Tim and a handful of other amazing trainers.
And so when you guys, at your practice, what are some things that you guys do? I know you talked about a lot of the things that you studied and your postdoctorate work, but what are some things that people could look for services for you guys?
Okay, that's a good question, because a lot of patients that don't know a lot about us, maybe they saw us on the internet or word of mouth or something. A lot of people come in just chiropractic, but once they get in, what we see is yes, this patient A has low back pain, right? That's a very common diagnosis of something that we treat. But let's say patient A has some comorbidities or additional diagnoses that by the way, I also have, depression, or I also have, I'm really struggling to find a good wellness routine. I just don't, some people just don't have no routine how to take care of themselves. So what we do is we always address the issue that the patient comes in for. But through conversation, if we see some other things are going on, we'll say, hey, we actually can help. Or, for example, a lot of people don't know, but I have a good population of patients that are sent to me through the VA. And yes, a lot of them come in for various ailments and pain, but PTSD is a big diagnosis that comes in, and acupuncture does really well. So it is not necessarily a cure-all for PTSD, but it absolutely helps them. Well, I'll give you an example of what a veteran actually told me. I asked him, what does it do for you? How does it make you feel better? And he said, this was a Vietnam veteran. He said, well, what it does is Vietnam was 50-some years ago, right? Well, when my PTSD is flared up, I feel like Vietnam was yesterday. My flashbacks were like I was just there. He's like, when I get an acupuncture treatment, it puts Vietnam 50 years back, and I can deal with it. He's like, I know that it's there, but it's not affecting my day-to-day like it normally would, if that makes sense. So that's just one example of something. But, a lot of people do know, through word of mouth, some other things that we do, like nutrition counseling. And with a natural internal medicine diplomate program, the one that I took, you still can specialize through that. But the area that I really focused on in that program was gut health. I was very interested in the gut and how it's, microbiome actually, the microbiota in there affect our entire body, from immune health, mental, emotional health, physical health, even, so there's a lot of different things. So that's where I like to start when it comes to somebody coming in for like a nutritional consult. What's going on in your gut? what's going on that way.
So you just said a lot of things that, like, that sounds really bad, that I really like. And so I want to take a rabbit trail on one of them. I want to point out something else, and I'm going to forget everything that we just talked about. But one of the rabbit trails I want to take is, and I didn't even think about this when we were preparing, was talking about trauma. Because we do, you know, we know that the community we work with, you know, some of our kids have been traumatized. And so that's so interesting. And sometimes we see these things, they're generational. It may not be that, you know, trauma from this person is affecting this person, but sometimes it is. And so I think that that's really interesting to talk about that, just for, like I said, a quick bunny trail to just say, that's amazing. That, you know, that's something, because, and we have a list of things that we want to talk about today, and we were going to talk about mental health. And so, like you said, it's not the cure-all. It's not saying that this is absolutely going to heal everything. And sometimes we still need to see those different practices combined. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of integrative healthcare. So my spectrum, the way I work, is from least invasive to most invasive. So when something comes in, if it's not like a dire, we need to get you on something right now, we're going to start least invasive. But for example, let's say we're trying to, you know, we're working with somebody and they're responding and they're doing good, but we're hitting a plateau, we're just not there. Hey, you know what? There's a medication that's going to do better than this supplement or this herb. So why don't we work with your primary care and see if they can help us out? And it doesn't mean the medication is a permanent thing. Maybe that's a temporary thing to get us to the next step. And then working with the physician, you know, sometimes they will taper them off or whatever. But one thing I can say is I've had a lot of good experiences working with Marion area physicians of all different degrees. And I really like that, because just today we had a patient that just was in an acute, you know, she couldn't get off the table, she was crying, I don't know how she made it in. So we realized we can help her, but the inflammation in her back, I mean, she needed an anti-inflammatory or needed something. So Tim was able to get on the phone, call her primary care, who got right on the phone with him, said, absolutely, I will work with you guys. This patient was then, by 2 different doctors, taken care of, and she avoided an ER trip, which is awesome during COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say integrative care is getting more popular, and the more that we all learn what each doctor does, we learn your niche, I learned this doctor's niche, so hey, I'm gonna refer to you for this and you for that. So when you get this like community of doctors going, it's really cool. But
that's what we're trying to do as agencies too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Collaboration and just realizing I as an agency can't do it all.
Right.
But there are other people out there who are doing things that people can get connected with. And why should I do it all? Because otherwise I'm not going to do the things that I specialize in, and I'm going to do everything mediocre.
Right. That's, which you don't. She does
we just had this conversation yesterday.
She blows me away by the amount of stuff she does. So yeah, that's the same with me. It's like when you take like an internal medicine diplomate, you still learn a lot about, it's like a natural medicine general practice diplomate. I still learn a lot about different things like the thyroid and stuff. But if I don't dive into that thyroid, I'm not going to work with it, which I did. That's not one of my major, you know, I will run blood work for it, but most of the time I refer out for something like that. But when it comes to the gut health, which I have really focused on, anything I can do natural, I will do. And then if we get to a point, we need the next step, then I find somebody to work with on that next step.
So let's start talking about the gut health and the nutrition aspect, because like I said, one of the things that we really wanted to do was talk about moving forward and future thinking, and just having, you know, because a lot of people are setting resolutions and goals right now, and we're just trying to look at fresh starts. And so we're putting into practice, or plans to put into practice, what am I going to start doing differently? And so talking about gut health and nutrition, hopefully we can give some people a little bit of advice to walk away with. So what can you kind of share with people in regards to, I know that that's a loaded question, because you're like, I have all of this information.
Yeah, but I see where.
But what would be helpful for some people who might be listening?
Okay, so if I was to just do, we'll end up focusing on the gut. But if I was to say, for me, when someone comes in and says like, I just want to be healthy, I want to look at the aspects of wellness. So mental, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health. Now, I'm not an expert in all those categories, right? But I know if you can get yourself well-rounded, you know, and a decent amount of health in all those areas, you're doing pretty good, because usually, you know, one area is lacking somehow, right? So what I would say is, like, let's go into the physical health branch, which would be the gut microbiome, right? And we'll just start there. So, and now, do you want New Year's goals and things tied around the nutrition, or you want to know a little bit more about the gut?
So maybe give us a little bit about the gut
Okay.
to tie into the nutrition. And the other thing I want to say too, as we're starting to talk about some of these things, it's so funny because your husband had also commented on these things, but I can't remember if he said on camera or off camera, like, if you're going to talk about nutrition, you need to get my wife on.
Oh.
So he did talk about some of this stuff a little bit. So
Okay.
I'll put a link to that episode in the description and everything. But yeah, if you can talk a little bit about maybe like some brief foundation stuff to help people understand, okay, then how should I look at goals and resolutions?
That makes sense. So when it comes to our gut, we don't always think about what it is. A lot of times we think, oh, it just gets rid of waste, right? Oh, it does a lot of
I
things.
literally knew nothing about any of this until you taught me anything. So I can imagine I'm not the only one.
Well, it's not common. And I'll be honest with you, do you like to study things you're not interested in?
Not at all.
I don't either.
I don't even like to study things I'm interested in sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes I just don't feel like studying. But
Right.
when I'm like really interested in something, I will read even boring stuff about it. So this is a super nerdy fact, but I like to get up, if I'm up early enough, I like to read an article on the gut and a research study in the morning before work. Now, do I do that every day? No. But did I do it today? Yes, I did. I was really excited because I found a study I liked. And the reason I do it is because it's not being done enough, and it is the wave of the future. I'm saying right now, when we find out how much, like, we're finding it out through research, but when everyone starts to see how much of our health, the impact our gut has on our immune system, our happiness, things like that, we're gonna go after it more. So we know that we have like a lot of little bugs, and like we call them microbiota, that live in there. We've got bacteria, viruses, fungi, all that stuff. And we have, you know, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. So if I was to name some like popular strands that we'll say bad bacteria that live in there, we know that we have E. coli, right?
Okay, sure.
Or salmonella strains. So we know that that can live down there as long as it's in check with the amount, and it's a little, I guess you'd say, its environment, as long as there's no overgrowth and things like that, you're gonna be okay. But if you come in contact with it on a countertop or whatever, you know, we're probably gonna have some diarrhea, right? So, but we know that we're gonna have that type of bacteria, but we also have what people know as the good bacteria, probiotics, right? So we know that we need everything in check. So we want, you know, even yeast. We have yeast in our gut. So we want the bad bacteria, the yeast, and the probiotics to live in harmony. And they do for the most part until we mess it up. And how do we mess it up? What we put into our bodies and actually stress. That's why I can tie in this little article I read this morning.
Oh, okay.
So what we put into our bodies, the thing, if I was to tell everybody one thing that we should all remove, is sugar. I mean, and I'm talking refined sugar, simple sugar, obviously processed foods, things like that. But the sugar is going to feed you know, without giving you medical details, the bad bacteria, the yeast, and all that. For example, so we know that is a big chunk of our immune system, right? If we have a nice, healthy... But no, when you said that... Oh, okay. I don't know that... I want to point that out because I don't know that I knew that. Like before, you know, learning from you, like that this was tied into my immune system. And I think that that's obviously something, like I said, that to me is enough. Like that people need to hear that all of this stuff is tied into your immune system, which is definitely imperative to know during the middle of a global pandemic. Yeah. So continue. Okay, thank you. And thanks for pointing that out, because sometimes I don't always know. I kind of sometimes assume that my audience knows everything I know, which isn't, you know.
Same.
And so what I would say is our immune system is mostly our gut. Now, yes, without going into detail, it is a huge component. It is most of the component of our immune system is our gut little microbiome system that's in there. So you have a gut-brain connection, a gut-lung connection. So without going, like I said, into too much detail, because COVID's going on, you hear about the cytokine storm and whatever. Well, there are certain cells in the gut that are like, we'll call them a double-edged sword. They can do some good, but if the gut is not in balance and there's too many of them, they're going to release things that's going to increase the cytokines, and that's when we have that reaction. So what leads to those cells, possibly an overgrowth, would be inflammation. So inflammation in the gut is bad on many, many levels. That's just, COVID is just one example. So if I was to do, if someone said, you have 2 minutes, give me something I can do to help with COVID if I was to get it, or what could I do with my own health to stay, you know, healthy for COVID. I'd say keep your gut health good and make sure your vitamin D3 levels are closer to 100. It's 30 to 100 is normal. We want it closer to the high end. We don't want it anywhere near 30. Below 30, you're looking at some autoimmune conditions starting to rear their ugly little heads. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I would say with the gut, with all those different connections, so if I was to make it quick, what do you do? Well, sugar's just one example in junky foods and toxins that we have, environmental toxins at that, you know, little things like that. Eventually, it starts to create a lot of inflammation, and it creates a condition we call dysbiosis, so also known as leaky gut syndrome. And so what that does is we have a whole lot of stuff going on. We're not living, basically it's not living in harmony. So we want to restore the harmony. We want the probiotics to be the most powerful. So how do those get wiped a little bit? Well, if you're on some antibiotics, right? That you want to restore the flora that you removed. What feeds probiotics? Let's say you weren't on antibiotics. You just want to feed them or get them more. They're actually just called prebiotics. Fancy term would be arabinogalactans. Like fruit and veggies, fiber. That better. We're feeding those the good bacteria. I will say this: the more we're messing with prebiotics to feed the strands that we have in our guts, they've connected that with decreased depression. So I thought that was cool. And the study I read this morning was on rats. And so what they did is, and this is where I'm going to get into the mental health side of it.
Awesome.
So they...
Moving right along.
Yeah. Trying not to go on too many tangents and tie it all in. But they, what they did with these rats is they put them under a chronic, controlled, mild stress environment. Okay, so I didn't read the details on what that environment was for the rats, but what it does, it induced stress, and it made it chronic, so it was chronic stress. Then what they did is they took like a stool sample of a healthy, normal rat, and then one from the stressed rats, right? And what they found is the strands of the good bacteria were all off balance. There was a whole... And so they thought that was fascinating enough, right? Yeah. So we know, and this wasn't changing diet, this was just mental, emotional stress changed the environment of the gut and the bacteria. Well, what
you just said can cause inflammation and all of that other stuff.
Yeah. So without it just being food, mental and emotional health can cause this imbalance. Well, then it gets even more fascinating. They then started to do, I don't know if you've ever heard of fecal transplants. But they took, why would you?
I know, I'm like, we have talked a lot already about stool and fecal. It's fine.
If you come see me and we're going to talk about the gut and health, you're going to talk about poop.
It all ties together.
It's just going to happen, sorry. But yeah, so they started to take a sample from the stress rats, a fecal sample, and they transplanted it into the intestines of a healthy rat. That rat, the healthy rat, started to develop depressive behaviors.
Oh my gosh.
So the depressive behaviors that was found in the stress-induced rat was like, oh, they wouldn't groom themselves, they wouldn't eat, they just kind of laid around. You could tell they
had things they would do on a normal basis.
Like they want to play with their wheels or whatever. These rats that were healthy and fun, then they got the fecal transplant, and then they started to show those, I don't want to groom myself, I don't want to do any, and I'm like, gosh, that's like total human, like we get like that, right? Well, the reason this is interesting is because it's going to eventually, it's the wave of the future for medicine. Like, so what we have is a lot of antidepressants and things like that that aren't always as effective. If you know, a lot of times 12, 18 months in, it's lost its course. It's no longer, you have to either get an additional med or you have to change it. So we need something that's more lasting. Well, what they're finding out, and this study specifically mentioned Lactobacillus. So that's a common one you'll see in probiotics. That one was linked to decreasing depression when given to the rats. It decreased those depressive behaviors.
Wow.
But the other interesting thing was when they started to give the rats prebiotics, that also helped. And so they were looking at it from a few different standpoints there, which I thought was really cool. And what I would say is, like, yes, in the future, we're going to find out everybody might have, we're not all going to have the same strands and the same amount of strands. We're different, just like we have different blood types, right? So I would think eventually we're going to get probiotics that are tailored to an individual. So what that means is, somebody comes into my office, and this is a little bit in the future, we do stool samples now, but the stool samples, I'm hoping, from the research I'm reading, are going to start measuring strands and what's going on. And hey, you know, you would benefit from, maybe it's a, what do you call, a compounding pharmacy puts a certain thing, you know, what the word I'm looking for, concoction of bacteria together, the probiotics, to give to an individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, a lot of us just do they'll take the research in the most common ones. So most of them are going to have like a lactobacillus in it, right? That's just a big strand we all have. So something like that's how we kind of are on to the future there. But for right now, a broad spectrum probiotic is a great start. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
And we talked about gut inflammation. I think I've mentioned this quote quite a bit in different things I've done, but a lot of people know serotonin and they think, oh, that's something that makes me happy or whatever as a neurotransmitter. And they always think the brain. But this is where the gut-brain connection comes in, because actually 80 to 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. Wow. Yeah, so you have a dysbiotic, you know, super inflammatory environment, your serotonin is not going to be there. So a motivating factor to eat healthy isn't always, you know, you hear everybody, well, why do you want to eat healthy? The term or the answer a lot of people give is weight loss, right? Well, not necessarily. When we see that I want to eat healthy because I don't want to feel depressed and anxious all the time, that's important to me. You see what I'm saying?
So this might be too general of a question. So if it is, I'm really sorry.
No.
And you can just say that, like, don't ask that question, and we're already recording. So, but like, if I were someone who maybe is out there, and again, like we've talked about, some of this stuff is not going to necessarily be exactly what you need. And I guess this will be a quick disclaimer. Like, if you need serious mental health assistance, we have great counselors in town. You know, if you're feeling depressed or anxious, there are certainly great resources out there. But so my question is, if I'm, you know, maybe just feeling low, we personally have talked about like the holiday crash. Yeah. It's, you know, all this great stuff was happening, and now it's like, well, now what do we have? Especially because the new year is going to be here and everything. So if I'm someone who's like, I just need to, you know, make some changes so I feel a little bit better. Like, how long do you think it could take someone to start practicing like healthier eating to maybe see some of that change?
Okay, that's a really good question.
I know, and I didn't prep you for it, so I'm really sorry.
No, that's okay. So I want to go back to that. So hold that anchor, because I can explain. Long story short would be, or long answer short would be, how big of a mess is their gut? How long have they been unhealthy? And how unhealthy have they been eating? Because I've had patients come in that's like, you understand, I'm super unhealthy. And I'm like, okay. They're like, so I'll like, give me, you know, sometimes I'll have them do a food journal or diary, like give me an example of what unhealthy means to you. And then I'll read, you know, I always say I grade it like a paper. I tease them. I say, give me your 2-week journal, and I take my red pen, because I write my notes in it so that they can actually see them. But I never ever judge anyone or punish them. I just like to tease, because it gets people riled up. Yeah. But what I'll do is then I'll see this diet, and I'm over here like, you're eating cleaner than me. What do you mean you're unhealthy? No, I'm thrilled. You call that bad? Like, oh, okay. But then somebody comes in and it's like, no, I'm pretty much healthy. I don't think there's a lot of changes. And then I see we're skipping 2 out of 3 meals a day, you know, oh, we go to fast food 5 days, you know, I'm like, okay. Maybe your definition of healthy from what you know isn't enough to keep your gut clean, to keep your serotonin up or whatever. Does that make sense? So I would, in order of how long, how old they are, do they have, now are they
so it's not a great generalized question.
It is a great question. Here I am being like, I need to individualize the answer. So give me the example patient. But that being said, this is what I would say, and you've done it with me. We've done Whole30 together, which is basically whole foods, and
there's a lot of information out there on Whole30 too. I'll link it.
Right? Yeah. So we started on that. So what is the first part? The first part is if we've been eating, we're going to say we've been eating a holiday diet, sugar, cookies, whatever.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yeah.
So we're craving that stuff. We get all the glucose we need from fruits and veggies, okay? So if you're craving sugar, that's not you. I always say it's the little monsters living in your gut that are like, feed me, because if someone was trying to kill you, you're not just going to sit back and be like, well, see you later, right?
Yeah, right.
You're going to like fight for your life. Well, that's what they do. And how do they do it? Oh, they irritate the crap out of you. So they're going to make you uncomfortable. You've heard the term hangry, like really pissy after, after a meal, you're like, I need my sugar, stuff like that. Now you know you're feeding something else. You are not feeding your body. Does that make sense? We're feeding something in there that does not need to overgrow. We need it to probably shrink, right?
Right.
So I would say when you did Whole30, when did you start to feel, when did those cravings calm down? Would you say about 10 days in?
Yeah, probably about a week or so.
A week, a little over a week?
So we're trying to, come off of the post-holiday, lots of sugar.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to do that this year. And I
said
did.
The same thing.
Yeah, it was a great few days.
There was my cookies.
Exactly.
And I had fun baking and eating them. Yeah.
I just ate them. I didn't bake them. And then I have noticed significantly the past few days, like, I'm so hungry all the time is what I feel like. But then I can sit and think like, no, I'm not. It's the sugar. I want the sugar.
Okay. So that's what you're craving. So it's a sweet tooth. So most likely your gut is like probably started to overgrow a little bit on the side on that side. And so what it is you're in between, like you're healthy. So you're not in that stage where you have autoimmune coming out, you have all these things happening. So you're just not comfortable because you have felt how good it feels to be healthy.
Exactly.
That's
right.
the thing.
That's what gets really hard.
So that's the other thing is like, once you feel healthy, you don't want to go back because
then you notice
happy.
the change.
Yeah,
for sure.
You're happy, you feel good, you have energy. And then once you start to get that sluggish feeling, you're like, oh. And then, unfortunately, when you get that sluggish feeling and you get that sort of what we talked about yesterday, that post-holiday depression or whatever, and you have the gut kind of overgrowing, how much motivation do you have to go make a smoothie and start working out again?
Right.
You just don't. So, unfortunately, if we cannot let ourselves get there, which both you and I said we weren't going to do, and it's really hard with family.
Yeah.
We're undoing traditions of grandma, great-grandma, great-great-grandma's recipes. It's not easy, right? So what I would like to do is instead of doing it for 2 solid weeks, all right, here's our day of fun, throw it out.
Yeah.
So that was one of the advice I had gotten from a wonderful instructor, and he had always said, look, you want to have Christmas, buy your Doritos, buy your Oreos. Whatever you don't eat goes in the fire. He said throw it in the holiday fire that night, because if you can afford to buy it, you can afford to throw it out. So I, and then that's one way to do it. That's what they said. For me, what I like to do, and this would be a good point for you to talk on too, on the emotional, like the mental, emotional health side of it, is like when you do a diet like that, when you have a cheat, okay? So to me, we just talked about what emotional and mental stress does to your gut. So if you're already gonna eat the donut, right? And eat it slow, enjoy your donut, let it, you know what I mean? Just say, hey, I chose this cheat and I'm okay with it. Just do it. And then when you're done, what you do, you're probably gonna have the sugar crash an hour or 2 later, whatever, let go of it. But then maybe that day you say, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm happy I did my donut. I'm gonna let that go, but I'm going to do an additional healthy thing to just be a positive thing, right? So maybe I'm gonna do a smoothie later with some probiotics in it or something, you know, something like that to kind of, it doesn't fully balance out. It doesn't quite work like that. But it, in my mind, okay, have your cheat and then just do something positive for your body later, because the worst thing you can do is as you're eating, I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh my God, this is so bad for me. I should be a leader in this.
Like
and I'm
almost
eating donuts.
punishing yourself for
Yeah,
all of
so
it.
then now you not only fed the bad bacteria, the sugar, but then you created the mental emotional stress, which would further enhance that environment. And it's like, why do that to ourselves, right? So the emotional side of eating is extremely important. We talk about eating slow, chewing your food and all that. That's very important. So like, you know, what we were talking about is the mental emotional side of how you eat, which we talked too about the Whole30. I really like Whole30. What my husband Tim's, one of his issues with it is, if you go 15 days in and you have a piece of dark chocolate, you have to start over. So he looks at that as almost a punishment. Now, in defense of Whole30, I understand why they did that, because they are trying to clear that gut from sugar for 30 days. So they want nothing in there that is going to feed the bad things that we don't want to feed. But I do agree with Tim's point. I would much rather have you eat a little piece of dark chocolate, and that's a super nice cheat. That is not even, in my mind, that's not even a real cheat. But I would rather have you do that and move on and just keep going and be like, you know what, apparently that night I needed that, then beat yourself up, start over, be disappointed. Like, you know, the mental emotional punishment with food is not cool. So that's why the reason I don't like a diet per se, I like lifestyle change. Ideally, we're just doing a Mediterranean, paleo type lifestyle, whole foods, okay?
Yeah.
Where we're doing lots of veggies and fruits, and meat is like a side dish, right? Now, someone asked me yesterday, they were talking to me about the Caveman Diet and things like that. There are people that have like that might go on like what we call the FODMAP diet. Like maybe they get super bloated and gassy with a lot of veggies or cruciferous or nightshades, right? So that's why, like, yes, there are specific diets, but what I like to start out with just a lifestyle change. A lifestyle change is something we're going to attempt to do. Just that's how we're going to live the rest of our life, right? A diet is something you do for a short-term goal. So that's why sometimes, depending on what the goal is, I'm not a huge fan of diets unless it is, in general, it's not something like weight loss is an issue for me, because that is where people are like, I'm going to follow this diet for this amount of time, I'm going to lose this weight, but then what are you going to do after your diet? What's your lifestyle change? Oh, I didn't think about that. So you're going to go back to what you did before after your diet. Yeah. Well, what's going to happen? The same thing that happened before. You see, so whereas I'm cool with a big lifestyle change and then a diet mixed in there. Does that make sense? So I'll just reference the keto diet. That was actually brought up yesterday. So the fasting side of it is really beneficial to a lot of people. What we've really seen a lot of benefit with keto is with type 2 diabetes, right? So what if we did a short term, maybe like a 3-month keto diet to get us, maybe, we're going to get down the hemoglobin A1C, sorry, I can't talk today, the blood sugar levels, okay? We're going to get that down, but then what we're going to do is we're going to transition into a lifestyle of more whole foods. The reason I say Whole30 or paleo autoimmune, people can research that. Yeah. They can get online and on Pinterest and type Whole30 chicken dinner. I don't know if they do have a lot of paleo. I don't know how much. Paleo autoimmune is closer to Whole30 because it's a little bit cleaner than regular paleo, so I like that one. But so yeah, we're going to do more of, the reason I go by the named diets is so that it's easy for patients to find recipes.
To look up, yeah.
Right? So, but if someone said, I don't want a named diet, well then just whole foods. Ideally, what we're meant to have, what our body does best with. And yes, like you can individualize that. You can do a food sensitivity test. You can eat right for your blood type as an example, but people are different. So we do want to look at them different. There's no one diet for everybody, right? So that's why sometimes, that side of my brain goes nuts when we're trying to do like a challenge at the gym, because I'm like, oh, but I know that person would benefit from, but I have to we're doing generalized health.
So I just want to say, when we're saying all this, and I don't normally do this, but I just want to plug another partner, because we do have Center Street Community Health Center just opened up the Center Street Market downtown.
Yes.
And I've been in there, and they have some great Whole Foods. They have a lot of that stuff that you're talking about. So if anyone's listening or watching, then that might be a great option of somewhere to go to get some of those things. And they're local. They're a great partner. So
did you know, did I tell you I went there on Christmas Eve?
No.
So random story in the podcast, but I was driving to Kroger. I was talking to my brother, and he was like, why are you going to Kroger? Why don't you go to the Center Street Community Market? And I was like, I didn't even think of it. Just didn't think. So I turned around. I was the only one in there.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
The ladies working were just so fun. The one ended up, she was excited. I was excited. We were walking around the store noting different local products.
Yeah.
So I ended up not even meaning to. I got some last minute Christmas gifts. Local maple syrup, local hot sauces.
Awesome.
But if you go in the fridge, now this would be an example of a holiday treat. Riverside candy cane ice cream. And it, you know, so it was, and then when you go to check out, this was my favorite thing. They had a little refrigerator with Marion Flower Shop flowers in it.
Oh yeah,
I've seen that by the door.
Oh,
I was like, here's a little, so I got to bring her home some flowers. I was like, best grocery shopping experience ever, because I really don't like going to the grocery. So I was thrilled. I was like, I could do this again and again.
And it's not overwhelming. Like I for the longest time, just big stores, I'm like, it's kind of overwhelming for me. It's not. It's small. Everything is easy to find. And so that was a great sidetrack.
Well, I totally agree on that. So yes, like that's a fresh food. They even have local eggs.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally. That's a great one.
Great.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of stuff to talk about, but we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping up. So what you don't know, or may know if you watch, I don't know, is that I normally have like an unprepared question for you.
Oh, okay.
I know, and I felt a little bad about that because I'm like, oh, Coleen has been really nervous about this.
I get really nervous about being recorded, I'll be honest with who's ever watching. This isn't like my, I don't know, how would you word it?
I don't know. I can't think of words either.
It's just I'm better at talking to you in person probably than trying to talk over a podcast.
You seriously have done great. So, but I want to kind of cheat on that and kind of tie in like some of the stuff that we have talked about when we were preparing for today and some of the things we wanted to cover. But if I am a parent sitting at home right now and watching, listening, and I'm like, that was a lot of information.
Right.
And it was all good. It was really all good. But if I'm like, that was a lot and I don't really know where to start, but I know starting this year, I want to make some better choices and better changes for myself, for my family. What is like one piece of advice of where you would have them start? So some of the stuff that we didn't talk about, some of the stuff that we have talked about, whatever you want to do. So you kind of think about that for a minute. I'm going to talk to everybody and then I'll come back to you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if you have any questions, I'm going to link both of the businesses that Dr. Denton Prater represents. And in the description of this podcast, I'm also going to link the Center Street Community Health Center in the Market because why not? We've talked about them. We're going to give them a big plug too. And then if you have any questions about anything that we've talked about, I'm sure you can contact their office and they're super willing to help. You guys take insurance. You guys, you know, are a great help to the community. So obviously there can be a great resource for people out there who are listening. So, but if I'm a parent who has all these great goals and great ideas, but I don't really know where to start, or I don't know what I should start with, or I haven't come up with a goal, what is one piece of advice that you give me?
Okay. And I promise this answer is me not trying to suck up to you, but meal planning. Meal planning, because here's the thing, it's too overwhelming. What you just pick one random healthy meal, then no. So if you can meal plan, and I don't even care if you only meal plan 3 days a week. If you said, where could we start? Yeah. So let's start with meal planning. Yes, I would love to work out that each Sunday you plan your entire week or whatever your down day is. But at the same time, what if you just could plan 3 major meals on Sunday? Yeah. So how would you do that? I'm just going to give a Pinterest example, but you can also Google this for people like my husband that gets really mad when I only give Pinterest examples. But you can type in Pinterest, like just because we talked whole food and we talked about the name diets that are an easy reference for recipes, type in like Whole30, what's it, chicken, and pick your favorite easy kitchen equipment, Instapot, salsa dinner, whatever. Pick a few health, you know what I mean? You put it, and then they just pop up.
Yeah.
Yes, you can sometimes find some different ones through Google or a different search engine, but Pinterest is pretty good at having the best collection of meals in that sense. So yeah, maybe you do that. Maybe you make that for Monday night's dinner. Well, now you have a healthy lunch for Tuesday. Now Tuesday, maybe you make, we're gonna say, what's another good one? We'll say, we said crock pot or instant pot, you know, but maybe we're just gonna say easy. I like the word easy on there.
Too.
It's a great adjective.
And it works.
It does work.
It will still bring up tons of options.
Yeah, so don't forget the word easy.
Yes.
Easy, and sometimes I'll put like best ever or amazing.
Yeah.
We'll say, that we'll do a vegetarian here. Vegetarian skillet dinner, okay? So then all these things pop up. Well, I like that collection of veggies. I don't like that one. I'm gonna try that recipe. So now you made that night, and now you have healthy leftovers for Wednesday. And then Wednesday night you make something, now you have Thursday. So then you really only have a couple days left.
I love that idea. I do. I think that's a great idea. And like you said, it's not just like I might be planning dinner, but I'm also planning lunch.
Right.
And especially if we're bringing things like we can pack and bring to work the next day or heat up and throw in the microwave.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. You have your leftovers and whatever. Now, obviously, so I could have given a better example too. This is a fun one. Maybe you make pot roast on Wednesday night, okay? So we'll say it's crock pot again. You do this amazing pot roast. I mean, you are proud of your meal. Well, then comes Thursday morning and you have pot roast hash for breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
So breakfast is my favorite leftovers. So if we make like a recipe called Salsa Chicken, which is basically chicken breasts, you mix taco seasoning. I like organic or natural just because the packet ones tend to have MSG, which is inflammatory to our gut. You mix that with, I tend to do mild salsa because of kids, but if you like spicy, pick your temperature of salsa, whatever, mix the taco seasoning and the salsa, put it over your chicken, low 6 to 8 hours, you have salsa chicken, right? Well, leftover salsa chicken is amazing in eggs. So you
that sounds great.
It becomes a habit, a routine, and then it becomes fun. That's the other thing. Is my other advice is you got to make it fun, because if it's an obligation and you dread it, it's always going to feel like that, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that, and I think that's helpful too, because it's easy, especially if you're listening and you have kids, and you're like, you can basically plan 2 to 3 meals out of one. So
right.
I love that.
That's what I like too. Now, sometimes I'm kind of a leftover snob. Like I'll be like, oh, I know we just had that yesterday though. But then 2 days later, I'll want it. So
there you
sometimes
go.
I just have to wait.
It works out.
Yeah.
And then you want it again.
Yeah. So that's it. And other than if someone needed help and they're like, I don't have time, a meal service. Meal service.
And there are tons out there.
There are.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, again, for Dr. Denton Prater, I almost said Dr. Denton Coleen Prater, and that doesn't work. But or any questions about any things that we've talked about, feel free to certainly reach out to their office. I'll also have my information down below. As always, if you have any ideas for future episodes of the podcast, please be in touch with me. And as always, have a great week. Thanks.